everybody, and this is daily vlog number 4. Second day back into the program, and it was a mix of emotions for me today. Oddly enough, it is raining out here, very much so, and I feel it is almost a cathartic experience. Today, I don't know why, but at one point during the lesson, I just got this very sudden onset of a melancholy, despair kind of dread that washed over me. And I felt so overwhelmed in that moment. I don't know why. It was embarrassing, honestly. I just couldn't control myself in that moment. It felt really weird, and I needed to just kind of take some time to center myself. And I honestly, in that moment, I couldn't explain to you why. Just then, in that moment, it happened. It most likely just has to do with the stress getting to me. A lot of nights without a lot of sleep, really starting to catch up, and in general, just getting burnt out, which is ironically what a lot of people are probably going to be making their TikTok videos on. Managing stress and being able to keep your sanity. It's easier said than done, just like most things, right? But something to actively work on, maybe just in the future keep that in mind and know that even my candle wick will run out and burn out if I don't replenish it, which again is easier said than done. I did want to talk about some of the things that we discussed in class. I really resonated with when it was being said that there are some students that you're going to teach something in your class or do something, and not all of them are going to be engaged because that thing is just not in their specific wheelhouse. I actually had an instance of that in my LTO position. A student who was in my comm tech grade 10 class, she openly admitted, she's like, I don't like doing art. I don't like kind of creative things. She liked following specific parameters and instructions. She didn't really uh, have necessarily the developed skills to take and harness her creativity and kind of channel that into other projects. So I took that as an opportunity to give her some instruction with options rather than just saying you have full creative control. I was like, okay, let's sit down, let's make a plan. And off of that, we would explore some options where she gets to still have her own agency and choice. The onus is on her, the ownership is on her, but at the same time, she has that structure she can follow, and it's a little bit less overwhelming uh, when you're being thrown into the sea of do whatever you would like in terms of choosing topics, subject matter. For example, photography class assignment, I had a product photography assignment where they got to choose what they wanted to do for the actual photograph. If it could be anything that intrigued them, interested them, related to their hobbies and whatnot, they got to actually pick the topic, and she really struggled with that. And for my demonstration that I did live in the classroom in the studio, I brought in a lot of my own plants because I love my plants. They're great. And I felt like it would be a really cool way to play around with texture, composition, because there's so many different kinds. Like I brought in cactuses, leafy pothos, all kinds of different plants, and we even brought out the spritzer, and we're showing how you can enhance your product photography with the spritzer, right? Plants naturally, you want to see that kind of wet look sometimes, just like if you ever think about when you photograph a beverage. You never see a Coke commercial and the Coke bottle is just completely dry. It's always drenched in droplets of water to signify that it's refreshing, right? I aptly named that project the show off assignment. Show off something that you love. That's the whole point of it, because I wanted the ownership to be on them to be able to say, hey, this is something that I really like. And now I get a cool picture of a thing. Some students brought in their artwork and their art supplies to kind of signify and set it up in a way where they really got to show off something that they enjoyed, and also learned the content that I was trying to deliver to them. So I found it really beneficial to have that onus and ownership incorporated into their lessons. Other than that, I did want to also talk about basically in chapter 3, to me, it read just, we're going over UDL, we're going over different learning styles, and just you're expanding on learning styles and instructional methods, all the things we've been echoing to ourselves and one another, and profs have been saying to us throughout this program. So there are so many more that you can classify and put under, but just again, utilizing UDL, making sure that you're trying to hit as many as possible, and also not falling into the pitfall of, oh, well, this style works for me, so I'm going to teach it all this way. Well, that doesn't work for everybody. I really like something visual and auditory, so for me, videos are fantastic. I would way rather watch a video than read a text or a chapter in a textbook any day. That's just me, though. I've learned ways to adapt. There's reading softwares where you can put in all of your text and then it'll tell you what exactly it says, so you can have that auditory learning. But for me, I just, how I try to incorporate it is I make a detailed step-by-step plan of what the actual content and the skills are and how to achieve them, and then I try to couple that with a video if I have enough time. And I always try to make sure that if I'm uploading it, I try to do it through Google Classroom if I'm using Google Classroom, or download it through Google Classroom because they make automatically generated subtitles. You can then download it with the subtitles and then upload that to whatever learning online platform that you're going to be using. And then in addition, I like to do live demonstrations. I also, in general, just try to think of any other way that I can get the students to learn something, right? So the first time that they used a camera, for example, in my instance, I didn't like I didn't just give them the lesson and say, here's a camera. I gave them the camera first because that's how I learned. And I know you're not supposed to teach the way you learn best, but I felt that having the kids have an opportunity to actually just play around and have a hands-on experience with the camera would get them more excited, right? Rather than sitting there and just learning about the aperture triangle, or sorry, the exposure triangle, they're actually getting to play around and go, oh, why is it dark? And I'd say, well, try and play around with this feature. And then they're like, oh, okay. It's that actual being able to do it. But also having that backup where it's like, we got time to play with it. Now we're going to learn about it. And you can learn along with the lesson while I do it with the cameras in your hand. Because then that way you can actually concrete those theories, those skills, the information to the actual physical thing that you're trying to incorporate it with. It can be a lot of information for people to learn the exposure triangle. I know I tried to do it last year in my first year, and it was supposed to be a 10-minute video we made for Tim, and it ended up being like half an hour, and I'm pretty sure I still didn't even get the point across. I'm pretty sure he still has no idea what any of it means. And that's something that I want to go back and try and redo and make it even more friendly and approachable. And I'll try my best to just do it right now. So there's 3 elements: ISO, shutter speed, aperture. ISO is the brain of your camera. It's the sensor. It determines how sensitive it is to light. Low number is for when it's very, very bright out because it has a low sensitivity. High number if you're in a dark area, you need it really sensitive. That's all that one does. Aperture is the hole in your actual lens. The bigger it is, the more light that gets in. Bigger depth of field, more in focus. So you know when you see pictures, it's all blurry in the background, it looks all cool and everything. That's your bokeh. That's how you get that. And if you want something super detailed like a landscape, you're probably going to go to a higher number, right? And then that's where they all kind of go into each other. And then shutter speed. Shutter speed is just how fast the shutter goes down. Do you want something in high motion? You're going to need high number. If you want something more blurry and slow, you want a low number. That's the best way I can briefly explain it. And it's important to know how all of those coincide within each other because, for example, say you're taking sports photos, okay? You need a really high aperture. That's going to make it darker because it's going so fast. So you might want to boost up your ISO so it's more sensitive to light, so you're actually getting a decent exposure. Well, if you want a big depth of field, how much of it do you want in focus? Boom. Then you're going to just take that and apply that number where around you want it to be. Do you want it to be at a 2 where just a little bit's in focus? Or do you want it to be at an 8 where like a good general portion of it is? Or do you want it to be at a 10? Or do you want it to be at a 15 or 17? See, only do you want just the player in focus or the whole crowd? That's when you, if you want the player and the crowd, that's when you do like a ridiculously high number, and then it gets darker. And that's the best way that I can just briefly explain it. Hopefully you understand, Tim, or anybody else watching it. If you don't, I just got to make another lesson plan and revise the one that I did way back when, because that was a whole unit I tried to shove into a 75-minute lesson. Don't be like me. Don't do that. Other than that, just keep taking into account, like, you just have to incorporate what you can, how you can, the best you can. Because when you were a student, you probably had teachers that reached out to you better, A, because you're maybe more engaging, but also because they took the time and consideration to not just sit there and talk to you for 75 minutes every day or made you read out of a textbook. I know that I benefited greatly when people try to incorporate different kind of medias and platforms in. So I just want to be reciprocal and also make sure that my students are having those same opportunities. It's important to me to make sure that I'm being equitable, empathetic, and also just making sure that everybody has that even playing field where they can have the accommodations that they need to actually succeed. When Tim was talking about every student should have an IEP, I fully agree. I absolutely fully agree. Why are we not taking the time to individually assess students and see what works best for them and put that in a proper document that's there and available for teachers so they can utilize it to make sure that they're actually having more of a profound effect on these students? That's just my thoughts, but anyway, I have to go do assignment things, and I wanted to get this done and not submit it at 11:40 for once. So have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll see what it brings in store for us in the future.